Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I think this is the best food I've ever had at a conference so far, so hope you're all enjoying that too. I'm super excited to be here today, partly because I think I've discovered I feel quite like Taylor Swift today. I'm wearing this snazzy microphone that I've never really done before. There's a sea of people that I can't really see your faces too clearly. And we're going to be hopefully having some fun today too. But I can't dance, I can't sing. What Taylor and I do share in common, though, is a really, really detailed understanding of fans. Right? I think Taylor Swift is probably one of the experts in fans right now, but up there, I think I'm there too. As Andrew said, I work for a business called Two Circles. We are based all over the world, North America, EMEA, Australia and New Zealand, and we are in the business of growing the value of sports. That could mean growing audiences, so followers, people watching on broadcast, people following on owned channels, we'll get into that in a bit. It could mean how do we grow event day revenues, it could mean how do we grow merchandise revenues, it can also mean how do we grow media and sponsorship revenues. So we do all of those different things, really growing revenues for sports organisations. But actually, when I talk to people, I like to say we're not really in the sports business, we're in the fans business. We do all of these things by knowing fans as well as possible. These different areas of growth can only be true if we understand fans brilliantly and act on that understanding brilliantly. That's creating strategies, that's implementing it through marketing, providing brilliant content, providing the brilliant platforms that people might use to engage with our clients. And actually, that means that our clients are in the fans business too. And what I would suggest is that pretty much everyone in this room now is in the fans business. You might be saying that I work in racing. Actually, you work in fans. These are just a few of the different racing organisations we've worked with over the years. Hopefully, some of you can see your own logos up there today too. You are all intrinsically connected to fans. So this session is about helping you do an amazing job at connecting with them every single day. Today, what we're going to talk about is why fans matter, what they want, and how to give it to them. Hopefully three fairly simple things to do. I've said the word fans quite a few times already today, and I will continue to do that as we go. And probably by the end of this 20 minutes, you'll be sick of the word fans. And actually, I think that is a bit indicative of what's happening in the sports industry right now. We say the word fan just at the drop of a hat. We say it all the time. Everyone is always talking about fans. I know that you've been talking about fans in these sorts of events for the last few years. But I think we can sometimes lose the meaning of what that actually involves. If I just put this sentence up here, has anyone been talking about not giving fans what they want for the last few years? I see a sea of no hands going up. No one is saying, don't give fans what they want, or give fans what they don't want. We're all focusing on it. But I would suggest that we've still got the blinkers on to some extent. I had to use a horse metaphor today, I'm at a horse conference. And I think what needs to happen is we need to get back to why fans matter, rather than just saying they matter and then getting on with our lives. So a little bit of context on what's happening in the sports industry right now. For the last decade, sports has been in a really, really brilliant place. Sports has grown by about 50% between 2012 and 2022. If we're looking at revenues here, that's across what we'd call sports rights, the IP around sports. So event day, sponsorship, media rights being the primary ones. We've not got wagering in here, but the things that people are spending money on in sports. It's been a brilliant time to work in sports. And it's really been a case of all boats rising. If you've been working in the sports industry for the last decade, you've probably experienced significant growth. And if we go back to my point about blinkers, sometimes I think we take the wrong messages from that period of growth. We look at all the new and shiny things that have happened over the last decade, all the technologies that have now appeared that weren't there before, all the different products we might have implemented at some point. And we say, yeah, that's why we've grown. The real reason that everyone has grown is that we've had more fans and sports have been able to engage with them better than ever before. Now, the good news is that that is going to continue. By 2030, there will be about 4 billion sports fans globally. 4 billion people to go after. And the good news is that most of that growth is actually going to come from the region that we're all talking about today, from lots of different countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa in particular. So we've got this growing industry, this growing base of fans to go and speak to. And the even better news is that the sports industry is going to continue to grow over the next 10 years, going to about $260 billion US by 2032. Now, the big caveat about these numbers here, you remember I said the last 10 years, basically everyone has grown. The next 10 years, not everyone is going to grow. At 2 Circles, we are projecting that 15% of sports organisations that currently exist will not be around in 10 years' time. And if I think about all the kind of existential questions that people have been asking in the room today, this is a really relevant data point for you to be thinking about. It's not just racing that's dealing with some of these questions, it's all sports. And one of the main reasons that sports will struggle in the next decade is that they didn't know their fans. Growth is coming from the biggest players in sports. It's the NFL, the NBA, Premier League, some other soccer leagues, football leagues around the world. Those are the big threats, and they are getting increasingly good at knowing their fans. So if we think about what those levers that are going to drive growth are, we've got 3 of them. We've got more fans, that 4 billion number, and they're paying more attention to sport than ever before. Sport is uniquely good at cutting through the noise. If you look at the most watched TV events in the US, for instance, sport is taking an increased share of those every year. And that's good for sports. The next lever that's going to grow towards that 260 billion is diversified sports experiences. Being able to serve those 4 billion people better than ever before, making sure that more of them are actually feeling involved, feeling like they want to be part of the sports industry. And the third point is direct value capture. Now, what I mean by that is having a direct relationship with a fan. So not just saying, oh, yeah, a fan is watching me on TV, watching my products on TV, or maybe buying a ticket through a third-party provider, but having an ongoing one-to-one relationship with that fan. That will drive both B2B revenues and B2C revenues. And if we, again, think about what that means for the sports industry, you might be having a question in your head right now, which is, okay, well, what do I do? Do I look at demand? Do I look at supply? Now, I would suggest that a lot of people in this room for the last few years are probably thinking more about the supply side than the demand side. And that is what we've seen across all sports for years and years and years. Everyone thinks about who's competing, when are they competing, how do I just make sure this event happens? But actually, if we want to be fan-focused, if we want to really drive those levers that I was mentioning just now, we need to be demand-focused. We need to be thinking about who's watching, who's spending, how do I get more people coming in? Now, interestingly, I was at a similar conference to this a couple of years ago for cricket. And in cricket world, there is an ongoing conversation about there being too much cricket. There's just too much of it. And someone said, we've got too much cricket. And I imagine that various people in the room have had a conversation before saying, there's too much racing. We've got a lot of racing on. There's loads. But actually, there is too much cricket in the wrong place, the wrong type of cricket. If we look at what fans want, what they need, one of the biggest, fastest growing areas of cricket in the world is tape ball. It's essentially a ball with tape wrapped around it. That is drawing in huge crowds. That is what fans want. So rather than messing around with formats and saying, right, we'll add another competition here, what needs to happen is to step away, to zoom out and think, well, what do fans want first? And then go to supply. Look at demand first, then supply. So the first thing to remember about today is let's obsess over demand rather than over supply. Now, if we think, right, we've got fans, yeah, we care about fans, that's important. What I would love everyone to do now, I'll take 30 seconds over this. If you get your phone or a piece of paper in front of you, just write down one thing that you think would improve your racing experience. Just one thing. It doesn't have to be big. It could be revolutionary if you want to. I can see lots of people staring at the screen thinking, what would I do? Why is this person making me write something down? I'm going to be charitable and assume that everyone's got something. What I would like you to do now is delete that or cross it out. Because I imagine, looking at most of you and knowing that you all work in the racing industry or in some way are attached to it, that you're a bit weird. You are a core fan. And sport has thrived on those core fans. We're really, really good at servicing core fans. And sport has targeted core fans. It's been run by people who are core fans. That is how sport works. We've become brilliant at it. But most fans are not and never will be core fans. So how do we make sure that we take into account the whole of the fan set, rather than just those fans like us? Now, this doesn't mean that core fans don't matter. Most of sports revenue comes from a really small group of core fans, and that's why we've become really good at designing for them. But we need to make sure that we address this casual fan base too. So how do we give all fans what they want, rather than just a few of them? I'll be a bit indulgent here. This is me. Hopefully you can see I look the same as my picture. And these are some things that make up my fandom. I love Roger Federer. I would probably leave my husband for Roger Federer if he came and said hello to me. I'm a huge Man United fan. I love women's football. I will watch the Rugby World Cup when it's on. I listen to cricket on the radio, watch the Tour de France if I can. I've recently moved from the UK to Australia. I'm trying to understand how AFL works. I still don't, but I'm trying. And I love golf hospitality. And that makes up me as a sports fan. Now, all of you in the room today will have different ways that you engage with sports. You won't be exactly the same as me, or I hope you're not. And we need to engage with sports fans one-to-one, rather than just assuming, right, this is a woman who looks this way and engages with these things, and therefore we can do all of these and we'll just get the right solution for her. But there are some commonalities that we need to be aware of that can shape how we design for all our different types of fans. Now, if I think about my experience with Roger Federer, who's the first man I ever loved, I loved Roger Federer when I was young. And most sports fandom is kind of formed, it originates when people are young. In fact, half of sports fandom is started by the time someone's 14. Now, some sports, racing's one of them, F1's another, start slightly later. But what that means, if we think about this battle for attention that everyone's in the sports sector, certain sports have stolen a march on you very, very early. Soccer in particular would be the earliest one. So how is it that racing can compete? Obviously, we know that there are nuances to racing, particularly with the wagering side, that affects the age that you can engage. But what's the offer we're making to those younger fans? Again, if we think about why someone becomes a fan, there tend to be 3 barriers to fandom. It's understanding, it's caring, and it's belonging. So understanding, people in the UK actually find cricket really hard to understand. That's a major barrier for cricket. Baseball in the US, no one finds it interesting, exciting anymore. Football in Europe has a real problem with female fans who don't think it's for them. Now, each of you will have different barriers that play a bigger or a smaller role when you're trying to engage with fans. But these do interconnect, and they do all need to be measured and monitored. Knowledge and passion, or caring, are deeply connected. The most passionate also know the most. And if you think about me saying, we're quite weird in this room, we all understand what racing's about. Most people don't. So how is it that we can fuel knowledge and fuel passion together. Now, this is a great example from the Professional Triathletes Organisation. They are investing hard in this, and they are building platforms, products that help people understand more about the sport so that their passion can be built over time too. If you've got time later, I'd also recommend looking at the World Rugby social channels. They have done a brilliant job recently of trying to explain more about what's quite a complicated sport to new fans from target markets. So that's something that we really need to get after. We also need to address friction. Now, if I said at the start, lots of sports are facing similar challenges. Quite a number of fans over recent years have said they've experienced a decline in their fandom. It's more in some sports than others, but it's a pretty widespread problem. That can be a life cycle piece, but it can also be that we're putting blockers in the way of people getting what they want. And if you think about all the biggest businesses around the world right now, they are businesses that are reducing friction. So how can we make it as easy as possible for fans to access what they want? How can we take some of the logic of these businesses and put it into customer journeys that we build? The final piece that I would say on this, on the barriers, is community. Community has a massive role to play in how we serve fans. Now, if you're a fan of a sport and you are a fan in isolation, an ISO fan, only 12% of those people are likely to be highly passionate about a sport. If they share that passion with one other social connection, that rate doubles to 24%. And if they share it with multiple other social groups, that increases to 79%. So how is it that we can create and lean into communities to make people more engaged with the sports that we love? There are some nice examples here of different organisations who've been doing this well. Wimbledon in particular, really investing in shared experiences in different markets for their fans. So if we nurture with knowledge, with convenience and advocacy, that should help overcome some of those barriers that we face. My third thing to think about, how do we give fans what they really want rather than what they say they want or what we think they want? Now, gut feel is not representative of reality here. Has everyone seen Ray Gun? Put your hand up if you've seen Ray Gun over the last month. Yeah, lots of people have seen, more people than that have seen Ray Gun. Ray Gun was one of the breakout stars of the Paris Games recently, partly because her performance was so left field and entertaining. The most viewed TikTok video ever, tell me if you've seen this, is an Australian woman called Leah Houghton doing about a 10-second lip sync to a piece of music. It does not deserve to be basically the most watched thing in the world ever, but it is. And then my final point here, the Ryder Cup recently went to a smaller course and got a higher yield, so more money per person than it had before, even after fans had said they wanted lower prices. Sometimes people do not do what they say they will, and sometimes fans can surprise us. Now, we are all swimming in data. Everyone here will be swimming in data. I know you are. You have loads of it. But I would say that as an industry, the sports industry isn't very good at using that data to interact with fans, to be able to be truly data-driven. I'd imagine that quite a lot of you can answer these sorts of questions. Numbers. How many people? What's big, what's small? Where do people live? Those are not the right questions to be asking. The right questions to be asking are questions that are connected to an outcome that you want or need, a revenue outcome. Which of my audiences are growing fastest and slowest, and why is that? Where in my customer journeys are people most likely to drop off, and what can I do about it? It's these sorts of questions, asking the right ones, that really matter in being truly data-driven, which I know some of my fellow panelists will come on to in a minute. So asking good questions and measuring with precision are crucial. On the flip side, we don't actually want to be too precise when it comes to the content that we serve fans with. Now, if you were to look at the social media channels of loads and loads of different sports rights owners, what you would see is that what we call offbeat, so unexpected moments, are 12 times as effective. They perform much better than your kind of normal sporting moments that happen. So those ray gun moments are the ones that break through. And if I just show you this video here, this is one of Liverpool Football Club's most effective videos ever at driving traffic. Now, this is a partnership that they did with Chalco, which is a coconut oil and milk provider. And this video is the players trying to come up with a marketing campaign for it. I wish I'd come up with this. This is brilliant. But this is something that is one of those offbeat spikes that has driven traffic. So it's not just let's show more football, more action. It's creating space for creativity that fans love and what they want. So if we think about how we navigate this, it means we need to measure and act with precision, but create with breadth and leave that scope there. So those are my 3 things. Obsess over demand, fans. Nurture with knowledge, convenience, and advocacy. Measure with precision and with breadth. But one final thought to leave you with. I can feel the love for racing in the room today and last night. And I think we're really privileged to work in an industry where so many people care about what we do, and we care about what we do. And we need to treasure that. We need to make sure that we really look after fans and make them feel looked after too. And a lot of that comes from showing them that we care by doing these things and telling them about it. That's me done. I'm going to pass over now and look forward to speaking to you in a few minutes' time. Thank you.